Welcome dear audience, students and scholars. Here I am Dr. Amjad Ali. In this video we are going to discuss a case study, the sacrifice ratio in practice. Dear scholars, the Phillips curve with adaptive expectation implies that reducing inflation requires a period of high unemployment and low output. By contrast, the rational expectations approach suggests that reducing inflation can be much less costly. So let's discuss main question here, that is what happens during the actual disinflation. Okay, consider the US disinflation in the early 1980s. This decade began with some of the highest rates of inflation in US history. Yet because of the tight monetary policies the Fed pursued under the chairman Paul Volcker, the rate of inflation fell substantially in the first few years of the decade. This episode provides a natural experiment with which to estimate how much output is lost during the process of disinflation. So let's discuss the first one of the main question here. The first question is, how much did inflation fall? Okay, as measured by the GDP deflator, inflation reached a peak of 9.7% in 1981. So it is natural to end the episode in 1985 because oil prices plunged in 1986, a large beneficial supply shock unrelated to Fed policy. So in 1985, inflation was 3%, so we can estimate that the Fed engineered a reduction in inflation of 6.7 percentage point over 4 years. The second question is how much output was lost during this period. Okay, we have here a data related to the unemployment in the case of United States, that unemployment during the Volcker disinflation period. We have data from 1982 to 1985 that we have unemployment rate during that period. And we have the natural unemployment, that is 6%, and we have the cyclical unemployment and 3.5%, 3.5%, 1.4%, and 1.1%, and total is 9.5%. So assuming that the natural rate of unemployment during that period is 6%, we can compute the amount of cyclical unemployment in each period. In total over this period there was 9.5% point of cyclical unemployment has been witnessed in case of US. So Okun's law says that 1% point of unemployment translate into 2 percentage points of GDP. So therefore 19 percentage point of annual GDP were lost during the disinflation period. So let's calculate the sacrifice ratio. Now we can compute the sacrifice ratio for this episode. We know that 19 percentage points of GDP were lost and that inflation fell by 6.7 percentage points. So hence 19 over 6.7 or we can say 2.8 percentage points of GDP were lost for each percentage point reduction in inflation. The estimates of the sacrifice ratio from the Volcker disinflation is 2.8%. Okay, this estimate of the sacrifice ratio is smaller than the estimates made before the Volcker was appointed Fed chairman. In other words, Volcker reduced inflation at a small cost than many economists had predicted. So one explanation is that the Volcker tough stand was credible enough to influence expectations of inflation directly. So yet the chance or the change in expectation was not large enough to make the disinflation painless. In 1982, unemployment reached its highest level since the Great Depression. Okay, Walker disinflation. Although the Walker disinflation is only one historical episode, this kind of analysis can be applied to other disinflations. One comprehensive study documented the result of 65 disinflations in 19 countries. In almost all cases, the reduction in inflation came at the cost of temporarily lower output. So yet the size of output loss varied from episode to episode. Rapid disinflations usually had smaller sacrifice ratios than slower ones. That is in contrast to what the Phillips curve with adaptive expectations suggests. A cold turkey approach appears less costly than a gradual one. So moreover, countries with more flexible wage setting institutions such as shorter labor contracts had smaller sacrifice ratio. These findings indicate that reducing inflation always had some cost, but that policies and institution can affect its magnitude. So this is all about the case study, the sacrifice ratio in practice. So see you with another video. Ciao.